Welcome everyone, it's Egwin here from Beyond Systems. Today we're talking about balance and swaying while walking. I recently got a couple of requests regarding this topic again. I did a video regarding swaying while walking in the past, I think a year, 2 years ago, something like that. So I'll link that video down in the description below. But for today, I really want to focus primarily on explaining different possible causes for why there is an imbalance or might be an imbalance or balance issues or swaying while walking. Now, before we get started, if you want to know more about how the body, mind, emotions, our consciousness are linked with each other and what you can do to actually improve yourself in all of those areas, then click the subscribe button to stay up to date with all the new infos that I put out on a regular day basis here. And if you know someone else who might be interested in this information, then please feel free to share the video. I really appreciate that. Now, without any further ado, let's just dive right into the topic. First of all, swaying while walking and balance issues while walking are not necessarily the same thing. While swaying in walking might literally refer to something that is more a pattern problem, so where a movement pattern actually can be corrected. Balance issues while walking, they might be there in one situation and they might not be there 5 minutes later, but then pop back up again. So the difference between a regular pattern and an issue that sometimes pops up and sometimes not is not so much the original causes, but how it's processed in the body, how it shows in the body as two different things. When something pops up, like, okay, I'm completely either having a vertigo right now, or I just feel unstable, not 100% of the time, not enough so that it actually leads to a permanent swaying or a permanently adapted walking pattern. But sometimes I just realize from time to time I just feel as if I'm not connected to the body. Then this is a different issue than the pattern of swaying per se. All right, now regarding possible causes, probably one of the biggest causes for most people is a high tension in the body. Now, when I say high tension, I'm specifically referring to high tension in the leg area, in my hip joints, in my quads, glutes, my hamstrings, around my knees, lower legs, calves, and also the feet. See, the point is, when those areas from the hips down, those three major joints, the hip joints, the knee joint, and the ankle joints, when they don't work with each other properly, when they are not coordinated well, but there is a high tension for whatever reason that high tension is in there, then the proprioception, so your perception of that area, is also quite limited. The issue with that is, the higher the tension in the body, typically, the less conscious control you have over those muscles. The more tension, the more difficult it is also for the body, consciously and subconsciously, to actually balance your posture, to balance your movement, and to adapt to outside situations. Like maybe you walk on a paved walkway 1 second and then step over into the grass in a park the next. Now this makes a major difference and your brain has to adapt. If the tension, the basic tension level in the body is already relatively high, then there is less potential for your body to adapt. See, if this is my maximum tension that I can bring into my muscles, full-on contraction. And this is the minimum level of contraction, like completely relaxed muscle. Now, if I have this full range from completely relaxed to high tension available to me, then I can easily adapt to different situations, and neurologically, it's possible to actually adapt the muscles, how they work with each other, how they coordinate with each other in a much better way. Rather than, if this is maximum, this is complete relaxation, and my tension level is already, the base tension level is already somewhere up here. Now I have a lot less possibility to adapt, and that's when walking becomes sort of this rather static thing, where sometimes when you see people step out onto some rocks or step off a beaten path, you see that they are very stiff, they're very imbalanced, very unstable in what they do. That's the reason for it, because there is no relaxation in the muscles down to a relevant level anymore. Tension patterns, high tension patterns in the body, obviously, again, can have a couple of different reasons. Might come from injuries, it might come from just simply not using the body, from having compensational patterns from earlier on injuries, and so on and so on. So all of those might be original causes for high tension situations. Apart from muscular tension, what we also have to address here is the simple possibility that there might actually be a lot of tension in the fascia, in the connective tissue stored in our bodies. If that is the case, then again, the symptom is very similar. Fascia actually has more proprioceptive organs than almost any other structures in the body. A proprioceptive organ is sort of a sensor that tells you in which state a structure is in. And now when fascia is quite tight, again, for whatever reason that might be, then again, you have what displays to the outside as a high tension situation, but in this case, more of a passive structure, not so much of the muscle, but it translates the same. If mobility is lacking, flexibility is lacking, due to tension in passive or active structures in the body, then the result is that you will have difficulty with balance. Another reason for that is that apart from the brain not being able to use the muscles to their full capacity of adaptation, the other thing is the brain simply does not necessarily know how the ground is actually made up of. Normally, you do not look down when you walk. Normally, you simply look straight ahead. And how the ground is actually shaped is a combination of your visual sense, your peripheral visual sense, the sound your feet or your shoes make on the ground, and the tactile feedback from your feet, how the feet hit the ground, how they feel down there, and all of those three infos together, they eventually tell the brain, oh, okay, so that's how the ground is shaped exactly at that spot where I'm taking a step to. Now, when there is a lot of tension in the body, picture it like this. If you have a ball that is not very massively inflated, it's a soft ball, and then picture a stone, and you use this ball and you press this ball onto the stone, then the ball will deform. This deformation of the soft ball is something that, if it were your foot, softly adapting to the surface it steps on, your brain can actually recognize as, oh, okay, my foot is being deformed, is being shaped into a different pose than completely flat, or with the arch of the foot intact, whatever, but then the brain can pick up on that deformation. rather than having a foot that's almost like a wooden board. If you take a wooden board and you press that wooden board onto that stone, it doesn't really change its shape unless you put a lot of pressure in. Then you get an impression in that board. Now that would be the resemblance of a high tension state in your body. When your body does not dynamically adapt to the ground, but is rather stiff, then it's much more difficult to actually feel the subtle nuances, sensomotorically feel those nuances in the body, and the brain has a much harder time to adapt. So that's probably one of the main causes. There are a lot of others. And one of them obviously can be structural weakness. A structural weakness, for example, would be collapsed arches of the feet, for whatever reason again. But if the arches are completely relaxed, again, this is the opposite of a high tension situation. It's the lack of any structure. Now, if that ball is completely soft, say like a water balloon, and you put it on there, it almost flows over this stone, which again would mean that there is so little information for the brain to actually arrive that the rest of the muscles in the legs tend to tense up, and once they are tensed again, then you are back in your previous problem. It's pure sensomotoric feedback, basically. That's how you could wrap this up. That eventually leads to the brain having difficulty how to coordinate the muscles in a way so that your body is actually stable in what it is doing. Motor control in general can be a balance as well as swaying issue. More so a balance than a swaying issue. Poor motor control, actually means basically if you have not used your body in a long time properly, then again, your conscious capacity to connect with the muscles in the body is rather limited. If that is the case, then you cannot really govern the body to the full extent of your physical would-be capacity. In other words, it's nice, you may maybe even perceive the ground, but if your brain simply has problems actually targeting the muscles and telling them what to do, either because the plasticity, so the connections in the brain are not there to govern the body in that subtle way, or there is actually a break somewhere in the link, and you want to activate the muscle, but you can't because the neurological connections are missing. So that would be a lack in motor control that can also lead to imbalances and balance issues and swaying eventually if it forms as a pattern, as a compensational pattern of a balance issue. Obviously, other aspects can also be the cause, like inner ear issues. Our inner ear has a lot to do with our ability to balance ourselves, obviously. And if you have an inflamed ear, or you had a broken eardrum at some point or something like that, that can cause problems. Also, sometimes vertigo issues from people who have this Meniere syndrome, this combination of tinnitus with vertigo, also that can create balance issues. So everything that affects basically the inner ear function will also have an impact on the body. This is also something that is relatively difficult to overcome. You can heal that inner ear, but in terms of there is a physical exercise that you can do to retrain your inner ear, Doesn't quite work like that. You can train your physical body towards more coordination, towards more sensomotoric feedback, to sort of puffer whatever incapacity there might lie in the inner ear due to an injury or a sickness. But that's pretty much it. Other neurological issues might also be a causing factor, like stroke or fibromyalgia and stuff like that. Obviously, everything where brain function, especially motor control brain function, is impaired can potentially lead to this balance issue. But that being said, the brain is an incredibly resourceful organ when it comes to balancing itself out again. And there is so much redundancy in the brain, you wouldn't believe it. Actually, the brain is built in a holographic matter, meaning that pretty much all parts of the brain can take over for other damaged parts and have that same function once properly rewired. So retraining is definitely something that's absolutely in the realm of possibility. So if you had a massive injury, massive stroke or something like that, or a spinal cord injury and stuff like that, retraining, relearning to walk again and stuff like that is absolutely in the realm of possibility, and can be done to a certain extent. Other issues might also be if you have poor eyesight or a neurological imbalance between how you perceive depth and stuff like that. That can also lead to balance issues and swaying issues while walking. Why so? For the simple reason that our eyes, they deliver, for most of us, this visual context of where we are moving through. For blind people, it's mainly the auditory system, and so the ears, what they hear from their surroundings. And for us, I say visual focused people, we normally use the eyes a lot. And the eyes, they are sort of the main aspect that connects your physical posture to outside objects, to that situation in your surroundings. Close your eyes and walk in a room that's got a perfectly flat surface from one side to the other. Now, you might think, okay, I'm going to close my eyes. I stand here. I want to walk over there. And you start walking. And then see if you actually end up at that spot that you originally intended to walk towards. Chances are you won't end up exactly there if you're trying this exercise for the first time, because so many other aspects come in and you suddenly realize how much stability aiding aspect actually lies in your vision. All right. Obviously, another aspect comes into play here, which is trauma, physical trauma, or mental, emotional, so psychological trauma. Both of those can obviously also cause balance issues. When it comes to physical trauma, the question is, which type of physical trauma? Is there nerve damage? Is there like brain damage? Is there some sort of muscle imbalance, muscle damage? Is there connective tissue issues which would lead back to the high tension aspects? All of that obviously would have to be assessed specifically to target the exact area that you need to focus on in order to retrain your balance or get out of a swaying walking pattern and so on. Speaking of pattern and psychological issues and stuff like that, now this leads me to another aspect. When we talk about psychological aspects, we know that every single thought creates muscular tension patterns in the body. And I'm not talking about, okay, I'm thinking of walking right now, or I'm thinking of flexing my arm. No, if you think about anything really. The music you liked yesterday, the meal you want to cook at night, every single thought creates muscular patterns, muscular tension patterns in the body immediately. 99.9% of those you will not recognize consciously unless you pay attention to them, but they happen. Same goes for emotions. There is no emotion that is not linked to muscular tension, and certain emotions create muscular tension patterns in the body. Those again dependent on your own experiences with that specific emotion. That's one part. The other part is the basic pattern, the basic tension pattern, pulsational pattern of said emotion. And all of that together then forms patterns again. Now, if patterns, a pattern emerges whenever something happens more than once, more than twice, more than 3 times. It's something that is repetitively hammering into your whole system. So, for instance, say you grow up in an environment which is normal for every single human being, where you want to synchronize with your surroundings, with your social surroundings. And you see people in your social surroundings where, without even thinking about it, that are quite stiff, that are quite limited in their movement patterns. Eventually, you will, even if you're still physically capable of moving much better than them at a young age, you will start to adopt those movement patterns, those stiff, limited movement patterns, for the simple reason because your subconscious tries to subconsciously sync with the other people to be recognized as part of that group. Now, the second something like that happens and you become unconscious about it, then you are in a tension pattern or in a movement pattern that later on in life might cause troubles that potentially would have never happened had you grown up in an environment where those tension patterns were not part of your regular synchronization. However, such patterns can be unlearned. You can revert back to the basic movement patterns. One of those options is developmental movement patterns, which is something that I'm talking about a lot as well. So basically, you can use certain methods to retrain a healthy, free movement of your body. When I say emotional trauma, think about it like that. When was the last time you, say, were shocked because of something you saw, or because of something someone yelled at you, or whatever? Now, what did that create in you? What tension pattern did that create in you specifically? And now think about another person, and then let both of them describe that feeling. They'll describe different tension patterns with the same outside influence, individual to their own situation, apart from some baselines that might probably be the same. So every single impulse that comes from the outside obviously automatically translates into a body situation, a physical tension pattern again, but a physical tension pattern that doesn't originate from an injury, a physical tension pattern that does not originate from some sort of physical trauma or not using the body, but that originates from your thoughts or how you're emotionally compromised from certain situations, potentially over and over and over again. Get rid of those patterns, and again, if they are the cause of your imbalances will get better. And not just that, also your emotional basic state will improve drastically and dramatically. So you see, there are many different possible causes for why imbalances actually exist. And it's a good thing to try and get a feel for what's the cause for me specifically. We can go through certain tests to check for that, to see, okay, is it more emotional? Is it more mental? Is it an old injury pattern? One word on injury patterns. If you broke your leg at some point and you had a cast and you were walking in sort of a pattern where you constantly tried to take pressure off that leg where you were wearing that cast, and you didn't use, obviously, the joints in that leg with the cast properly because just one of the joints was just casted in. If that's the case, then your body has to develop a specific movement pattern for that specific time. And if your injury is already completely healed out, the cast is not there anymore, now the big question is, did the body let go of that compensational movement pattern? Did it completely relearn or just revert back to the state before movement was compromised for 6 weeks? Yes or no? If no, then this pattern will stick with you and potentially cause this swaying or injury compensational translated pattern later on into life. All right. That being said, there is many different things to say about that, many different possibilities to test all that. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, if you can see yourself in some of those areas. One thing that I will go more into detail on in the very near future is the feet, how to retrain mobility in the feet, and also this sensibility in the feet, the sensitivity of connecting with your feet down into the ground. So this will be a topic that I'll be talking about in probably the next video or so. And so when we take a look at all of this, there are a lot of possibilities to actually do something about a state of imbalance. And what I can tell you for sure is that everything that you do to fix a physical imbalance will also stabilize you mentally, emotionally, create levels of clarity in your life that you probably or possibly have not experienced for a long time. All right. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a wonderful time. Click the link in the description down below and check out the other video regarding swaying that I did a couple of months ago. And yeah, see you around soon. Have a wonderful time and click the subscribe button to stay tuned for the aspect of the feet. Have a beautiful time. Thanks for watching.